being fully transparent in these spaces because nobody was transparent with us. So it's important just to talk about that. And I also see that Bree has a hand up. I wanted to say quickly too, though, that Caitlin mentioned alternative forms of publication for digital projects. And so if we don't get back to that, I really want Caitlin to have time to speak to what other kinds of projects can look like that are not monographs published in a traditional way within the press. So I'm gonna give you some space to do that, and then we'll talk about the money and we'll get to Bree's question.
Okay, well, so I will say for anyone who is thinking maybe a traditional print monograph is not the best form for your dissertation or your second book or what have you, more and more presses are getting into what is called digital publishing, which can include enhanced ebooks. So sort of what looks like a traditional book, but links out to audio files or has more embedded digital images. And then there are some presses, including Michigan State, but also Stanford and Brown has a press type thing who are doing more born digital publications. And what that means is that the project doesn't have to be like a book, but online. It can be, for example, I'm working with a scholar or a team of scholars right now who have created an archive of documents that relate to perspectives on Africa published in the US during the 19th century as Africa was being colonized by other nations. And so I'll just throw that out there. It is a lot of work. It's definitely a situation where you want to reach out to acquisitions editors who publish those types of projects as early as possible, because they can help temper your expectations, I might say, and give you a sense of how you can approach these sorts of projects. But if it's something that you're interested in, if, for example, you do work with a lot of data visualizations, a lot of maps or something like that, you use GIS, then those opportunities are available. And you can, please feel free to reach out to me. I will actually drop my email in the chat because I'm happy to talk about that. I come from a DH background, and so it's something I want to see more of. I want to create more space for it within scholarly publishing.
Super exciting. Okay, the question was about money. Do you get paid for publishing the books? Kishana started to answer this in the chat, which is that you do sign a contract, and it's a legal contract that details in a lot of depth how much you will get paid for every copy of the book that is sold in paperback form and hardcover form that's sold overseas versus sold in the United States versus if there's a translation of it. So there, and it's in legalese, right? And so this is going to be, I think, an abrupt wow for a lot of folks when you get your first contract, because we don't know how to read these. Like, is that appropriate? Is that the right amount? The first thing I would say is have a mentor who has published a book before that has done pretty well, that will help you look at your contract to know if this is kind of standard. How much you can negotiate is dependent on the press, dependent on who you are, and whether you've published a book before or not, right? A lot of presses, not MSU, of course, but a lot of presses are like, you need us more than I can do, right? If you're an author who needs tenure, like, how much negotiating power do you have with the press? I need this in order to get tenure, so how much can I ask for here? But frankly, yeah, digital back feminism has done pretty well, and so like I get a check once a year based on how much is sold. But what you should assume is that you're not going to make a lot of money on your first book. I think it's a pretty good assumption that academic presses, do not pay. University presses do not pay like cents on the dollar for every book that's sold, and you're not going to make a ton of money. But maybe Kishana is balling out, and I don't know. So let me defer.
Well, I was gonna say, early on, I think by the time intersectional tech came around, like, I was able to negotiate. So I'm thinking woke gaming, maybe every I think it's quarterly, if I can remember, Caitlin. I think you all pay out royalties. It's based on maybe quarters, sometimes. But I feel like for woke gaming, I get like a 1,000 every quarter, for woke gaming and for intersectional tech. So those are, it's also based on the numbers that you got to do. So you see me, I'm constantly pushing the book out there. Hey, you need this for your class. You need this for this. Hey, it makes sense for that. We got to do our own You know, like, especially 'cause I'm at like a LSU Press, you know, I'm not at a place that has like a lot of money, you know, LSU doesn't, they don't have a lot of money to be able to do this. So I have to do like my own publishing. So, but every semester you're gonna see me pushing these books so people can get it on their syllabus, their institutions will buy it. You buy it for your mama and your granny, you know, I'm gonna do all that. We're gonna do all that.
Yep, it's a hustle. It's a full hustle, right? It's like selling on like having a good social media presence and going to classes and talking about it because they'll buy your book for everyone in the class if you go to have a conversation with it. Book tours, and from my perspective, were not put on by the press. I created my own book tour, right? Which was like, do you need me to come give a talk? Send me a DM. This is what my rig is. I'll come give a talk. Some places I go and give a talk for free because it's good press for people to come out and buy the book. And I think a lot of the money that some folks make on their book is also through talks, right? It's through going places and talking about it.
Oh, yeah, I just had a quick question, sorry, Bree, I mean, it was just about the money thing. So, I thought this would be a good time to quickly ask about the trade book versus academic publishing thing. I know that, trade books are useless for tenure, right, pretty much. But, as far as I'm aware, like with academic publishing, the royalties is like, what, like, sometimes like 7%?
That's incredibly low.
Really, really low.
It sometimes shows
Lower?
up, you know, it can be lower than that. What happens is usually after you sell a certain number, then the amount that you get per book would go higher, right? So that's at least how my contract works, is after I sold the first, let's say like 250 hard copies and the first 500 paperbacks, then the amount that I make on the book goes up after that. Because they're trying to make their money back, first of all. It costs a lot of money to print our books. It's a long process. So they're really, at first, they're trying to make their money back. They invest a lot of money in the process of printing our books.
Well, I was just wondering, do you see any benefit, like as academics, to trade publishing? I know that there's like, I've got some friends who are doing going the trade route instead. Like, is there anything that you would sort of say, like, you know, money has been made and everything, so like, is there any thoughts about like whether trade publishing?
After you get tenure, I would say do it after you get, if you're trying to get tenure at an academic institution, you need to put that trade book off. Because like listen, it could be a New York Times bestseller. It won't count for tenure. You might could write a little statement about it like in your impact statement, but they do not care. But also you have to think about the route and your pathway. You know, you could do that route, you know, if you're okay, you know, like with that, but I would say don't do none of that till like after tenure.
You can look at some of the public scholars, you know, that in Black and digital studies that I won't say all the names of, but that have done trade books. And they've had really popular trade books that people read quite frequently. But their pathway to tenure at their institutions has been fraught, right? So some of the biggest names of people who are on TV and pundits and stuff like that didn't have tenure at their institutions while they were incredibly popular. So it's a choice, right? Of what thing matters to you. I want to get this book out. I want it to be for this audience versus I want an academic career and I want to get tenure at an R1 institution. Like I said, our guidelines are what they are. They're not going to bend them for me.